On their very first day at an elite private school, two black twin sisters were met with stares full of prejudice, cruel insults, and even acts of vandalism. Despite it all, they chose patience, just like their father had taught them. But the bullies didn't stop. They escalated, dragging the girls into a public act of violence. What no one knew was that these girls had been trained never to back down. And today, they were about to teach their tormentors a lesson they'd never forget. The morning sun gleamed off the white stone facade of St. Barrington Academy, a school where every corner whispered of legacy, money, and old privilege. The bronze plaques, the ivy-wrapped columns, the blazers pressed to perfection, it all screamed one message: this place was built to keep outsiders out. Layla and Nia Thompson stood side by side at the wrought iron gates, their matching uniforms flawless, their postures tall, their faces unreadable. But inside, their hearts beat hard, not with fear, but with awareness. They knew the moment they stepped through those gates, they would be seen, measured, judged. Not as individuals. Not as sisters. But as something this school wasn't used to, two black girls walking like they belonged. Breathe. But don't blink, Isla whispered out the side of her mouth. I don't blink, Nia answered, steady. They walked. From the very first step, the air felt different. The other students, polished, pale, perfectly composed, watched them like they were walking through glass. A group of boys leaned against the stone railing near the main building entrance, voices too loud, too careless to be innocent. Yo, look at that. Double trouble, one said, smirking. Another chimed in, didn't know this place started offering scholarships for community service. Laughter, not roaring, but sharp, slicing. The girls didn't stop, didn't flinch. They'd been trained not to. Their father, Marcus Thompson, had made sure they understood what it meant to walk into rooms that weren't built for them. Former military. Disciplined. Focused. He taught them not just how to fight, but when. Layla's grip on her backpack tightened. Nia's jaw set. But their eyes stayed forward. Inside the main corridor, it got colder, not because of the air conditioning, but because of the weight in the walls. Students parted like waves, not out of respect, but discomfort, clearing paths as if afraid to brush against them. Not a word said, but every glance screamed what their mouths didn't: you don't belong here. At lunch, they sat alone. The cafeteria was grand, wood-paneled walls, high windows, oil paintings of alumni watching from above. Around them, students chatted in tight circles, laughing behind their hands, casting sidelong glances that felt like pinpricks. Is it just me, or do you feel like we're in someone else's movie? Nia asked under her breath. Isla didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence was loud. Then came the bump. A calculated shoulder shove from behind, hard enough to knock Isla's tray sideways. Mashed potatoes splattered across her blazer. Oh, sorry, said the tall boy with the bleach blonde hair and the kind of smirk that knew it didn't need permission. Bon Ashford. Son of Senator Ashford. Golden boy. Entitled. Dangerous. You should watch where you're going, he added, loud enough for half the room to hear. You should watch who you bump into, Isla replied, calm and clipped. The smirk twitched. He hadn't expected that. But it was enough. From that day, they were marked. After lunch, another student, a redhead named Cameron, snapped a photo of the twins as they walked down the hall. No shame. No smile. Just a click and a quick text to someone they couldn't see. They didn't need to see. They knew exactly what was happening. Back at home, their father watched them come in. Both quiet. Both composed. But Marcus saw the signals, shoulders held too high, smiles that didn't reach their eyes. He didn't press. But after dinner, as they cleaned up in silence, he simply said, remember what I told you. Nia turned toward him. Don't react. React with purpose, Marcus corrected. Don't just absorb. Absorbing turns to silence. Silence turns to permission. You are not here to make them comfortable. Isla looked up. What if they push? He didn't blink. Then you push back. Smart. Precise. But don't you ever lose who you are trying to make them see you. They nodded because they understood. They didn't walk into St. Barrington expecting to be welcomed, but they did walk in ready. And now the first shots had been fired. Whispers had turned to smirks, smirks to shoves, and they both knew the next move wasn't far away. The days that followed were like walking with a stone in each shoe. Manageable, but wearing. Every hallway, every classroom, every locker break came with tension braided into the air so thick it felt like breathing in smoke. The stares didn't stop. The whispers didn't soften. If anything, the silence from the adults only gave the cruelty more room to stretch. Brandon and his crew, Cameron, Seth, and Jonah, had made it their daily game. The twins weren't just outsiders anymore. They were targets. In the morning, their desks had gum stuck underneath. In gym, their lockers were mysteriously reassigned to the back corner. During lunch, Brandon would toss food near their table, not at them, just near enough to keep the message clear: you don't belong. Layla and Nia didn't react. They didn't shrink. They didn't run. They endured. Because that's what strength looked like when the system around you was built to pretend nothing was wrong. But the pressure kept building. Thursday morning. The hallway felt louder than usual, not with noise, but with intention. Eyes followed them more than usual. Groups paused in conversation when they passed. Cameron smirked too easily. Seth leaned too far against the lockers like he was waiting for a cue. Something was coming. And then it did. As the girls stepped toward their lockers, they stopped cold. Their locker doors had been painted, spray painted. Red and black streaks spelling out one word in crooked, dripping letters: rats. Beneath it, rough drawings caricatured their faces with bloated lips and distorted noses. Paper slips had been shoved through the vents, pages filled with racial slurs scrawled in marker over and over like some twisted chant. A banana peel hung from one handle. Laughter erupted behind them. Not everyone joined in, but no one stopped it. Cameron's phone was already up, recording. Custom decorations, Seth called out behind them. We figured your kind might feel more at home with some cultural flair. Nia didn't move. Isla didn't blink. Their muscles were tight, but their faces didn't crack. They turned slowly, just enough to face the crowd, to lock eyes with the ones laughing, the ones watching, the ones pretending they didn't see. And Brandon stood there, arms folded, that same bored smirk carved into his face like he'd been waiting to deliver a punchline all week. Smile for the yearbook, he said, tossing a roll of toilet paper at their feet. Could be the last time you're here. Laughter again, louder this time. But beneath it was something different, a nervous twitch in the air. Even the crowd could feel it, the line being crossed. Nia's hand curled into a fist, tight at her side. She could feel the heat in her palms, not from anger alone, but from shame, from the deep, sharp sting of being reduced in front of people who didn't even know her. They want a show, Leela whispered. Don't give them what they want. I'm not, Nia answered, steady. I'm giving them what they earned. She stepped forward. Brandon didn't expect it. He straightened just slightly, enough to betray surprise, but didn't step back. You got something to say, charity case, he said, smirking, arms wide. Or you going to cry to your little daddy? The shove came before the insult finished. Not from Nia. From Jonah. A hard, sudden bump from the side. Deliberate. Fast. Shoulder into Nia's ribs, knocking her sideways into the locker hard enough to rattle the metal. It was the spark. The crowd gasped, sharp and loud. Leela moved without hesitation, grabbing Jonah's wrist, stepping between him and her sister. But Seth rushed in from behind, slapping a binder from Isla's hands, sending it flying across the floor. "Oops," he said, laughing. "Didn't see you there." Cameron pushed closer, filming every second. "Man, this is gold." And then came Brandon. His fist didn't swing. It shoved straight into Nia's shoulder with more force than play, enough to stagger her again. But this time, she didn't stumble. She planted. Eyes locked on him, breathing controlled. And with one precise motion, no drama, no flair, she moved. Her arm snapped up, palm open, catching his shoulder and spinning him off balance. Not violent. Not wild. Discipline. Brandon stumbled backward 2 steps, surprised. What the? And then Leela moved. A clean sweep of Jonah's feet sent him crashing sideways into the lockers, his phone flying from his hand. Seth reached for her shirt, but she twisted out, spinning behind him, planting a firm, sharp hand in the small of his back and sending him stumbling into Cameron. The crowd roared now, shouting, phones up, too shocked to laugh, too mesmerized to move. Nia turned toward Brandon, who had recovered just enough to look angry but not smart. He charged. He didn't make it far. She ducked beneath his wide swing and stepped inside his reach, her elbow striking clean into his gut with trained control. The wind left him in a grunt as he folded, dropping to his knees. The silence was immediate, not empty, but held. Students stood frozen, caught between awe and fear. The bullies weren't laughing. Leela and Nia stood firm, breathing steady, posture sharp. Not showy. Not cocky. Just ready. Brandon wheezed on the floor. Jonah lay dazed against the lockers. Seth and Cameron backed away slowly, faces pale. Isla's voice cut the stillness. "You wanted a show," she said, eyes scanning the crowd, voice steady enough to ring in every ear. "Here it is." Nia stepped forward, her voice lower but just as sharp. "Next time, don't start something you can't finish." And then they turned, calmly, deliberately, walked to their lockers and began peeling off the red paint with torn paper towels. The message was clear. They hadn't cracked. They'd simply reached the line. And from now on, they weren't the ones running anymore. The silence after the fight didn't last long. The courtyard buzzed with tension like a wire strung too tight. Phones were still out, fingers tapping in rapid flurries, videos already spreading faster than gossip ever could. No teacher had been there to stop it. But now, as if the building itself had felt the impact, they came. Mr. Grayson, the vice principal, stormed through the crowd with urgency that felt performative, not protective. His eyes darted to the boys on the ground, then to Layla and Nia, standing calm, composed, and for a flicker of a moment, his expression betrayed something deeper than surprise. It was discomfort. Recognition. They won, it seemed to say. And I don't know what to do with that. What is going on here? He demanded, voice tight, trying to gather the authority he should have used weeks ago. Brandon groaned from the pavement, still holding his ribs, his pride more bruised than his body. "They jumped us," he wheezed, lifting a shaky hand toward the twins. "They just lost it." A few heads in the crowd turned, but no one echoed him. The lie hung there, naked and hollow. Not because it hadn't worked before, but because this time, too many had seen it. The hits. The shoves. The build-up. Everyone had seen the line. And who crossed it first? Isla didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her father's voice echoed in her mind like steady wind against chaos. Control is power. Don't waste your breath on lies. Nia simply stood beside her, her jaw set. Her hands still and ready. "We'll handle this inside," Mr. Grayson said, already pulling out his walkie, trying to mask the unease creeping into his voice. "All of you. Now." Inside the administrative office, the light was harsher, cold, artificial, the kind that made everything feel more sterile and less real. Isla and Nia sat side by side outside Principal Aldridge's office, silent. Their postures still straight. Still sure. Across from them, Brandon sat slumped with an ice pack pressed to his stomach. Seth paced nearby with a forced limp. Jonah nursed a scrape on his cheek like it had been earned in battle. Their father arrived within the hour. Elias Monroe didn't enter the school like a man called in panic. He walked through the front doors with a quiet steadiness. Every step measured, his suit crisp, his expression unreadable. The secretary glanced up nervously, recognizing him immediately, not just as a parent, but as someone not easily dismissed. He didn't speak to the boys or their parents, who arrived moments after, loud and flustered, demanding answers before anyone even asked a question. Instead, Elias turned to his daughters. He looked them in the eye, not just checking for bruises, but for cracks in their armor. And when they met his gaze, unwavering, he gave the faintest nod, not of approval, not of pride, but of understanding. "You did what you had to do." Inside the office, Principal Aldridge sat behind a desk too polished, too clean for the kind of mess now laid out before him. His fingers laced together tightly, eyes flicking from one side of the room to the other as if hoping someone else might speak first. Mr. Grayson stood beside him, stiff, trying to maintain a neutral posture even though the tremble in his jaw betrayed the storm beneath. Brandon's parents, Alan and Christine, were already mid-terror. "This is absurd," Christine snapped, pointing toward the twins. "They assaulted our son. These girls don't belong here. This is exactly what happens when you start handing out scholarships to just anyone." "Enough," Elias said softly. But it landed harder than any shout could. Everyone turned, even Aldridge. "My daughters were harassed, insulted, and finally physically attacked." Elias's tone didn't waver. He wasn't asking for validation. He was stating fact. "They defended themselves as I taught them to, with restraint." "If that's not what the boys said," Alan muttered. Elias turned to him slowly. "Do you want to review the video footage? Because from what I understand, a dozen students already uploaded it. Perhaps we should all watch it together." That shut him up. Aldridge cleared his throat, sweat beading at his temple. "We're conducting a full review of the incident, Mr. Monroe. Until then, all students involved." "No," Elias said, his voice a wall of calm steel. "We're not going to pretend this is mutual. There's a long record of complaints. My daughters filed 2 formal reports. Nothing was done. And now, when they finally stand up, you want to suspend them?" Grayson spoke up, weaker this time. "It's standard protocol." Elias leaned forward slightly, his words slow and deliberate. "Standard has failed them. If you suspend my daughters, we're not just walking out of this school. We're walking into court." Aldridge looked cornered, his mask slipping. "We'll review everything." "I expect you will," Elias said. "And while you do, maybe ask yourselves why the first time someone actually intervened wasn't a teacher, but my daughters." The room fell quiet. There was no threat in his voice. Only the truth. As they left the office, suspension pending review, Elias walked between his daughters, not shielding them, but walking with them. And as they stepped outside into the sharp air of early fall, Isla finally spoke. "They're going to come back harder now," she said. "I know," he replied. "They'll come to our door." Elias didn't flinch. "Let them." He looked ahead, eyes hard with certainty. "If they do, they'll learn something even uglier than their hate." Nia glanced sideways. "What's that?" "That's strength," he said. "Doesn't knock. It answers." The sky that evening hung heavy with the color of unfinished storms. Deep gray smeared across the horizon like a warning the world didn't know how to say out loud. Inside the Monroe home, the air was still, not quiet from fear, but waiting. Like breath held before a known impact. Elias sat at the head of the kitchen table, hands clasped, elbows resting lightly on the wood as he gazed out the window. He wasn't tense. But he wasn't relaxed either. He was ready. Across from him, Isla and Nia mirrored his calm. Each with their backs straight, hands folded, eyes fixed not on him but on the street beyond the glass. They knew. They all did. People like Brandon's family didn't lose quietly. They came back. And they always came uglier the second time. Isla was the first to speak. You said they'd bring the fight here. I said they might, Elias corrected, his voice even. But I hoped they'd choose better. Nia's fingers tapped lightly on the table, a slow rhythm of control. What if they don't? Then they'll see, he said. Not what we are, but what we aren't. Tires on gravel broke the stillness like a bone snapping under pressure. One car. Then another. Doors slammed, hard. Footsteps, fast and angry, stomped up the front walk like they owned the land beneath their heels. The girls didn't flinch. Neither did Elias. He stood in a single fluid motion, his presence rising like a wall that couldn't be climbed. Stay behind me, he said, not out of fear, but so they could watch. So they could learn. He opened the front door before they could knock. Not to welcome. To control the terms. Christine and Alan Drake stood there, seething. Her lips already curled in fury. His fists clenched at his sides. Christine's voice came first, sharp and brittle, already breaking beneath its own heat. You think you can get away with that little show at school? You humiliated our son. Elias didn't move. Your son humiliated himself. Alan took a hard step forward. You think this is over? That we'll let some thugs beat up our kid and just walk away? Elias's gaze didn't flicker. Your kid raised his hands first. He lost the fight he started. That's not injustice. It's consequence. Don't play that game with me. Christine screeched, jabbing a finger toward him. You teach your girls to attack people, to act like they run the place. No, Elias said softly, but firmly. I taught them not to bow. Alan's face twisted. He lunged, fast and messy, throwing a wide, untrained punch aimed more by anger than skill. But Elias had seen it before. Too many times. His hand shot up, catching Alan's wrist midair with clean precision, stopping it cold. You brought violence to my door, Elias said, twisting Alan's arm just enough to unbalance him. Not enough to harm. Let's be very clear, you don't get to do that and walk away like nothing happened. Alan shoved again, more out of pride than reason. It was all the invitation Elias needed. With a sharp pivot, he used Alan's momentum to guide him sideways, off balance, off power, down hard onto the porch. The wood cracked under the weight of his landing. Christine screamed, more in shock than fear, rushing forward and swinging wildly at Elias's shoulder. But he caught her wrist before she made contact, stepping past her like water around stone. And twisted her arm behind her back with careful, trained restraint. Stop, he warned, not as a plea, but as a final command. You came here to threaten my family. Now you're seeing what it looks like when we stand inside. Isla and Nia watched through the open door, not afraid. Not even surprised. This wasn't the first time their father had met fury with control. But it was the first time the world would see it. Christine writhed against his grip, her breath loud and shaky. Do you know who we are? She gasped. We'll ruin you. You can't touch us. Elias's eyes narrowed. You came to my home. You threw the first punch. You'll answer for every second of it. Alan groaned, still on the ground, stunned by the reality that his rage hadn't earned him victory, but humiliation. And just then, the sound pierced the air like sirens chasing smoke. Because they were sirens. 2 squad cars pulling onto the street, lights flashing in measured rhythm. Neighbors were already out on their porches, arms crossed, some with phones raised not to provoke, but to witness. The officers stepped out fast, hands resting near holsters but not drawn. They took one look at Elias, calm, centered, his daughters behind him, and then at the Drakes, disheveled and cornered by their own choices. One of the officers, a black woman named Officer Nyla Jacobs, stepped forward, voice calm but authoritative. "Sir, can you tell us what happened here?" Elias released Christine gently but firmly. She stumbled back, clutching her wrist, eyes wide with fury. "They came here with threats," Elias said clearly, eyes steady on the officer. "He attacked me first. I defended myself. That's all there is." The Drakes tried to speak, voices tangled in blame, but Officer Jacobs held up a hand. "We'll take statements from everyone. And we'll check the neighbors' cameras." Leela stepped forward then, her voice steady as her father's. "We don't need cameras to tell the truth. But if that's what it takes, go ahead. Pull the footage." Nia's voice followed, cool and measured. "Because we've got nothing to hide." Christine looked at the officers, desperate for sympathy. Alan still sat on the porch, winded and silent, his gaze flicking from Elias to the gathering crowd like a man realizing too late that the fight had never been fair, not because of strength, but because he had never stood on the right side of it. As the officers began gathering statements, escorting the Drakes aside, Elias stood tall in the doorway, flanked by his daughters. No raised fists. No shouting. Just truth, carved in silence, delivered in discipline. "You brought hate to our door," Elias said quietly, more to himself than to anyone listening. "And you expected fear. What you found was family." The waiting room at the Millfield precinct was cold, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Fluorescent lights buzzed low, like a tired hum. Walls off-white and peeling in corners. Nothing sharp, but everything intentional, like a place built to dull the spirit. Elias sat calmly, his back straight, one leg crossed over the other, eyes watching the hallway that led to the interview rooms. Isla and Nia sat beside him, silent but present. They had already given their statements, clear and concise. Nothing to hide. Nothing to twist. Across the room, Christine Drake paced with the restless energy of someone used to controlling rooms but suddenly finding herself irrelevant in one. Her lipstick had smudged. Her voice, hoarse from yelling. Alan sat slumped beside her, jaw tight, nursing bruised pride more than bruised ribs. The cameras from 3 neighbors' porches had been submitted within the hour. All angles. All clear. No ambiguity. Every second of the assault on video, and every second of Elias' restraint. Sergeant Bennett emerged from the hallway holding a file. His face unreadable, but his eyes told the story. He looked at Elias first. "We're done here, Mr. Monroe. You're free to go." Christine's voice snapped like a trap. "What do you mean he's free to go?" "He attacked my husband." "No, ma'am," Bennett said, turning toward her. "Your husband attacked him, and the footage proves it. So do the witness statements. You came to his home. You brought threats. You brought violence. He defended himself, and his daughters, within every legal boundary." Alan tried to rise, but Bennett's voice shut him down before he could stand. "Mr. Drake, you're being charged with trespassing, battery, and disturbing the peace." Christine's face went white. You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," Bennett said. "You're both lucky he didn't press more charges. We've seen the video. We've heard the threats. If anything, Mr. Monroe showed remarkable restraint." Elias didn't smile. This wasn't a victory. It was a correction, a restoration of balance. But not something to be celebrated. Just something long overdue. Isla stood, brushing off her jacket like she was shaking off a weight that didn't belong to her. Let's go home. Christine lunged forward a step. You think this is over? You think this changes anything? Elias turned, calm as stone. His voice didn't rise. He didn't need it to. It already has. As the Monroes walked out of the precinct, the afternoon sun had begun breaking through the gray. Not bright, but warm enough. Outside, a small group of reporters had gathered, alerted by police chatter and a few neighbors who had posted about the confrontation. Microphones rose. Cameras rolled. Mr. Monroe, do you have a statement? He paused only briefly, then looked directly into one lens. There's a line between strength and control. My daughters learned that today. I hope others did too. Nia stepped beside him, holding her chin high. We didn't come here to fight. But we're not afraid of being seen. Leela's voice followed, clear and cool. They tried to bury us. But we weren't seeds. We were already trees. The family walked past the cameras, not into silence, but into a different kind of noise. One they could shape. One they could stand inside without shrinking. By evening, the footage had gone viral. Not because of violence, but because of discipline. Because of the quiet power of holding your ground without becoming what you're fighting. Across social media, the Monroes weren't seen as agitators. They were protectors. The narrative shifted. The truth had a shape now, a face, a family. Christine and Alan would face charges. Their son Brandon transferred to another school before the week ended. No apologies were issued. None expected. But at South Maple High, something changed. The next time Leela and Nia walked into the building, the hallway didn't fall silent with suspicion. Eyes still followed, but not with judgment. With curiosity. With a kind of respect that didn't ask for a performance, just presence. In Mr. Halbert's English class, someone had added a quote to the whiteboard without signing it. Power is not how loud you yell. It's how steady you stand when the world tries to move you. Elias never asked who wrote it. He didn't need to. Because the fight wasn't about being loud. It was about being unshakable. And the world had finally heard.